The Marvel Universe is no stranger to reality-shattering events. As one of the Spideys in Spider-Verse says, this is a canon event. Probably the most pivotal event of the Marvel Universe in the 21st century is the House of M. The Prelude. Professor Charles Xavier has come to Genosha with one mission: to rebuild the mutant nation from its devastated ashes. On the worst day in Avengers history, one of the most powerful Avengers lost control of their powers. Amidst the chaos, Hawkeye, Ant-Man and Vision lose their lives. Many of the Avengers were emotionally and physically scarred. Months later, the Avengers and X-Men have been called together to decide on the final fate of the Avenger, whose reality-altering powers have already caused great destruction. The heroes must come to a resolution and put an end to the powers that threaten the universe as a whole. Amid their discussion on ethics and morality, a wave of white light engulfs them all, and in an instant, the universe is changed forever. House of M is a utopian world. Now, mutants rule over mankind as Homo superior, and Genosha is the global seat of power for Magneto and his children. Every hero has more or less what they ever desired, and nobody remembers a thing. It's up to the one who does to bring the heroes back to reality and overthrow the House of M. Find out how we get to one of the most iconic lines in Marvel history in this video. She's not a dog. The comic starts with Stephen Strange helping Wanda Maximoff give birth to two healthy, happy, beautiful twins. Vision, her husband, calls it a glorious day. He's ecstatic. Sadly for her, it's all a facade. Back in reality, Charles Xavier enters Wanda's room and cuts apart her reality, reminding her that she can't have children. She never could. She was abusing her mutant powers, only hurting herself further. She holds her babies close too, and she cries in agony. Charles orders her to bring reality to normal, shattering it into a million pieces, leaving Wanda weeping on the ground. Charles holds her and comforts her as she sobs. Xavier feels helpless, as his powers can only do so much for her. He's kept her at bay for a while now, but something needs to be done fast. She killed her husband. She killed Hawkeye and Ant-Man and disassembled the Avengers. Xavier holds her as she cries and puts her to sleep. Of course, he uses his powers to do so. Outside the room, Eric heard the screaming and he knew the answer but still held on to hope for change. He apologizes to Charles, who tells him that every time Wanda uses her powers, she loses more of her grasp on reality. Eric slowly comes to the grim realization and blames himself for her condition, remembering how he put his children through hell for his beliefs. His war against the humans was a war he waged and lost. A war he lost, just as he lost his children. As the men stare into the sunset of a war-torn and dilapidated Genosha, Eric still contemplates his preparedness to sacrifice everything for his war. He ponders upon the ruins around them as he floats up into the sky and feels as though he probably deserves the ruins around him. Charles tells him it might be true for Magneto, but not for his daughter. She doesn't deserve the fate the universe bestowed upon her. Up in the sky, Hank McCoy feels jealous of the new Quinjet model as he admires it, parked atop the landing pad of the skyscraper. Emma Frost confirms it as the new Avengers Tower. What other tower would have the Quinjet parked, after all? In New York City, the old Avengers, Falcon, Wonder Man and Ms. Marvel make their way toward the new Avengers mansion. They talk about the secrecy and having to walk in instead of using the Quinjet and proceed towards an elevator up the Stark Towers. The confidentiality was warranted, as the new Avengers haven't been made public since the calamity that broke the old Avengers. The X-Men, the Beast, Emma Frost, Cyclops, Wolverine, Kitty Pryde and Colossus are the only ones remaining of the X-Men after the event. They soon met Charles, Captain America, the Wasp, Ms. Marvel, Wonder Man, Professor X, Doctor Strange, Iron Man, Falcon, Spider-Man, She-Hulk, Luke Cage and Sentry, along with the new Avengers, assembled in the meeting room. Charles tells them the reason they're all here. They need to decide the fate of Wanda Maximoff. Back in Genosha, an inconsolable Pietro Maximoff comes to Eric with the news that the heroes are planning to kill his daughter, his beloved sister. Eric stands there, frozen with grief. He knows what must be done, but he doesn't have the strength to do it. His son cries at his feet, feeling dejected and helpless. Eric glances at his daughter, peacefully sleeping a suggested sleep. Meanwhile, Emma gets straight to the point in the towers and suggests putting Wanda down. Captain America doesn't even wish to entertain the thought, and Spider-Man and Wonder Man disagree immediately. Cap seems to think that there's always a way, to which Logan disagrees. Charles is asked for help but points out crudely that he wouldn't be here, assembling the heroes, if there was something he could have done. Emma asks for Doctor Strange's opinion, who's already at the limit of his knowledge and is still researching new ways to help Wanda. She points out the fact that Wanda is a mutant, and X-Men deal with mutant threats. If word got out that a mutant killed the beloved heroes of the city, it'd set human-mutant relations back by millennia. Her argument is very convincing, but some of the heroes would never agree to kill Wanda. Emma then decides to put things to a vote. The Avengers vote not to kill her. She's an Avenger before a mutant, they say. Scott and Xavier have a moment where Xavier's desperation is visible. He's out of options, and his last hope is the heroes assembled in his room who are bickering like children with no end to their argument. Janet and Carol want to see Wanda first, stating that she was like a sister to them. Spider-Man makes a point by asking if they'd kill him if his powers went out of control too. Logan points out the fact that the witch has already killed a few heroes. Logan then tells Peter he'd kill him in that case and expects the same for himself. After a moment of quiet, the majority votes for a peaceful resolution, and so they decide to pay a visit to Genosha. As they fly over the ruins of Genosha, Kitty comments upon the state of their mutant nation. All she sees there is what the humans would do to them. They land, but Charles senses something. It feels wrong, a feeling nobody can shake, but no one can pinpoint it either. Wanda is missing from her room, and so is Magneto. The hero sends foul play and start extracting, just when Emma finds the witch and leads the heroes towards her. When they reach the ruined building, Strange comments on the lack of mystic patterns usually generated by Wanda's powers. Spider-Man remarks on him feeling weird, but his spider sense isn't tingling. He turns and they all start vanishing one by one, all except for Spider-Man, the last man standing. Soon enough, a blinding flash of white light hits him. Peter Parker wakes up to a pleasant, familiar voice, a wedding picture of him and Gwen Stacy next to him. Gwen Stacy, who was supposedly long dead in his world. Something's changed. The Bronx, New York. Steve Rogers has aged normally and seems to be living a peaceful life. He smiles as he sees the hustle and bustle of children playing in the neighborhood. In Hartford, Connecticut, Scott Summers and Emma Frost seem to be a happy couple, as Scott makes her a Pop-Tart while she talks about her patient for the day, a young Richards boy whose parents were astronauts who passed away recently. In Los Angeles, William Simons is on The Allison Show. He makes a spectacular entrance, and they get to talking about his relationship with Carol Danvers, or Miss Marvel as we know her, who's now the most popular superhero in America. Carol Danvers intercepts a group of robbers by stopping their car. The car tumbles into a park nearby, and Gambit throws his cards at her. Dodging his attacks, she grabs him and takes him away to safety from the exploding vehicle. She turns him over to the law enforcement. In Cincinnati, Ohio, Kitty Pryde has become a teacher for young mutants, a fairly stagnant role, some might say. She talks about the first mutant, Namor, and the children seem mostly distracted from the lesson. At Hell's Kitchen, New York, Sam Wilson, a detective, has a confrontation with Luke Cage, the leader of an underground movement. Sam questions Cage about Wilson Fisk, who was beaten into a coma last night. Somewhere in the world, Stephen Strange is now a practicing psychologist. His patient, Robert, is talking about a recurring nightmare with his son where everything collapses into the void. In Russia, Colossus happily mowed an entire crop field by himself. In Chicago, Dr. McCoy speaks with Dr. Pym about the ramifications of his research and how Tony Stark, or the mutants, won't be kind to its results. When Pym gets into the details of his work, Hank makes him understand how it might be perceived. Trying to isolate what makes mutants different would be the same as trying to isolate what makes black people black, or other races for that matter. The idea is anti-mutant, and Hank warns him so. Pym feels disappointed and dejected as he realizes that his kind, Sapien, is technically inferior to Homo superior and will soon become extinct while being aware of it. In Paris, France, Princess Aurora wonders what the House of Magnus would be wearing as she tries on dresses with Janet Van Dyne in her atelier, Van Dyne. When she summons the elements, she complains about the dress bunching up in front. Janet tells her she can fix it. She even managed to get the Wakandan fabrics Aurora asked for. Nothing short of absolute perfection will do for the House of Magnus. Aboard the helicarrier, Logan suffers from a nightmare. It's the one where he gets up from his adamantium infusion and goes on an amnesia-fueled rampage. He wakes up and almost kills Mystique while being woken up. Something's different. Logan rushes out of the facility to find out he's an operative of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s elite Red Guard aboard the helicarrier. With it, a fleet of jets and sentinels. All are adorned with the symbol of the House of M. Logan remembers. In a state of disarray, trying to figure it all out, Logan suddenly remembers it all. The first time his powers manifested, the first time he meets Captain America, they fight together. The experiment that infused his bones with adamantium, his fight with the Hulk, Jean Grey's sacrifice, Mariko's rejection. He remembers Xavier asking them all for help for Wanda. He remembers the moments before the bright flash. Amidst all of the remembering, he's interrupted by Mystique. She's worried about him, and when he asks her about Genosha, she refers to Eric as Lord Magnus. Out of nowhere, Logan jumps off the helicarrier and crash lands into a building several thousand feet below. Logan gets up, his healing factor taking care of his injuries, and wonders what's going on as he sees a radically different New York. When he checks out a newspaper, he realizes that the world around him has surely changed. He steals a motorcycle and heads for Westchester County immediately. To his surprise, there's no X-Mansion and no Xavier School for the Gifted, just a regular mansion with regular people in it. He leaves and goes to a gas station phone booth, trying to find lists. After failing on that, he looks out for the only one he remembers to be the last man standing, Peter Parker. Unfortunately for him, though, he fails to find anything relevant about Parker as well. Eventually, Logan heads back to NYC and goes looking for Tony Stark. He's met with Agent Drew and his squad, the Red Guard. Drew asks him to walk out peacefully, but Logan hits her in the face and makes a run for it. Nightcrawler chases him, but he gets caught in Raven's crossfire and Logan gets away. He gets back on the motorcycle, makes an escape, and catches air as he sees Cloak appear and engulf him in his bike into the void. He exits the void in front of Luke Cage and his gang of ragtag heroes, Iron Fist, Misty Knight, Moon Knight, White Tiger, Black Cat, and the Sons of the Tiger. Logan calls Cage by his name, to his surprise. They talk, but before anything, they mustn't be found by the Red Guard using Logan's tracker. Hawkeye comes out of Cloak's void and draws an arrow, pointing it at Logan's neck. Layla. In a different Genosha, Castle Magnus. Eric, in a melancholic mood, overlooks the utopian kingdom of Genosha. His grandson arrives and gives him a toy ship made by his mind. He somehow feels even more somber. Back in Hell's Kitchen, NYC, the place widely known as Sapien Town. Hawkeye holds a drawn arrow to Logan's head. Cage questions Logan about how he knew his name. Amidst Luke and others telling Hawkeye to de-escalate the situation and Logan failing to verbally calm him down, he releases the arrow. The arrow goes through Logan's head, pinning the tracker inside his neck to the wall. A good shot. As Logan bleeds out, he hears the heroes freaking out over his body. 30 seconds later, Logan wakes up to the surprise of some. While Cage and Barton are arguing, they fail to notice, and Felicia shows them an awake, perfectly okay Logan. Logan knows it's too late when he's told he was out for some 30 seconds. Too late for what? Hawkeye asks. He's answered with an explosion. Through the gaping hole in the building, 2 sentinels appear to be floating, locked onto the Sapien targets. As they unleash their destruction, Logan saves the kid next to him, and Cloak takes most of them away from the danger to Wilson Fisk's office, the only place he could think of. Cloak unfurls his cloak and the heroes come out. As they look out the window, they see the clouds of smoke emanating from Hell's Kitchen below them. They wonder if the others made it out alive. As they watch the chaos below, Cage tells Logan the reason he was brought to them. The Resistance had inside sources working in the helicarrier. They got information on a certain Red Guard agent going AWOL. It was a sight to see their star agent jumping ship. Cage thought it was worth talking to him. Logan tells his story to the heroes and Cage. He talks about the old Avengers and the new ones. He mentions Magneto and Genosha. He mentions the twins, Wanda and Pietro. Clint Barton says Wanda is the human one out of the twins, which surprises Logan. It couldn't be. Logan proceeds to tell them about Wanda's past, a day ago when she was the Scarlet Witch. She caused the reality around them to change, and nobody except him remembers the past. She was the reason the Avengers disassembled. 2 days ago, the heroes had a meeting about Wanda and they went to Genosha to meet her. That was the last thing Logan remembers before it all went sideways. Now they're in a world where an exiled mass murderer turned into the king of their world. No X-Men or Avengers ever existed. A mutant utopia. What about Hawkeye? Clint wonders. Of course, he was dead. The witch killed him a few months ago. Logan asks who they're all supposed to be. He recognizes Moon Knight and Iron Fist. He tells Danny, of course, he knows him. Cage explains their movement, a resistance trying to keep the balance from underground. They try to make sure the sapient minority gets their fair share in the world. Luke proceeds to talk about the kid he met and how their stories match well. Soon, Luke confirms Logan's story. He heard the same story from the kid a day ago. Her name is Layla. She woke up one day and the world was wrong, and nobody knew except her. She wanted to tell someone, anyone, and stumbled upon Luke Cage. Charles is the only one whose powers could cause this to happen. Logan knows that and tells it to the others. He theorizes Magneto got his daughter to give them all that they ever wanted, so he could have what he always wanted. They must have used Xavier to know what everyone else wished for. Later, Cloak is told to take them all to the Summers residence in Connecticut, and they're transported in an instant. Layla must do to Emma whatever she did to Cage. Emma's brain can't handle it, Logan tells her. The kid freaks out because she doesn't know her powers or how to use them. Logan calms her down by telling her that she's a mutant and jokingly wishes her a happy birthday. Emma enters soon enough and is greeted by Logan and the rest. She makes them all unable to answer with her powers, not before reading Logan's mind. Logan asking her to take a look. She sees it all. Her childhood, her training, her intimate moments with Scott, the fate of Charles, the House of Magnus. She snaps out and says she's going to find them all and kill Eric and his children. Logan has no qualms about it, but they need a lot more than just the two of them. But that still wouldn't mean the world wasn't screwed over for good, he says as he reaches for the fridge and cracks open a cold one. Tragic realities. Emma Frost shows Layla a visual projection of her psychic self, a brain. Emma finds the kid very special in her powers. Her powers don't seem to be psychic. She's unlike anyone that Emma has ever seen. A conundrum. Emma talks about the world situation, all because of a deluded mutant. She needs Layla's help to band together the heroes of an entire world so they can try to put the world back together. Layla wonders if that's even possible as they join the rest back in the physical world, back at the Summers residence. They wait for Scott to arrive, and before he can begin questioning, he's shown everything by Layla. Scott gets himself together and wonders how Magneto could have done this to the whole world. He asks for Xavier's whereabouts. Logan says they've not found him yet. Whoever else could they find? Luckily, they manage to find Peter Parker. Soon, they arrive in a park where Peter hands their child over to his spouse, Gwen Stacy. The heroes greet Peter, and Emma apologizes to him as she uses her and Layla's powers to make him see their actual realities. The radioactive spider that gave him powers, the death of Gwen Stacy, the Kingpin, the Green Goblin, his school bully Flash Thompson, Dr. Connors, Dr. Octavius, and J. Jonah Jameson. He remembers Aunt May. Face it, Tiger, you just hit the jackpot. He remembers Mary Jane saying to him, Venom, and Carnage, his wedding with MJ. It all comes crashing down to him as he collapses and cries. He's barely holding on, his true reality weighing down on him. He holds back tears on hearing the voice of Uncle Ben, asking him if he's okay. No time for nervous breakdowns. Emma uses her powers to send an upset Gwen Stacy away, the same Gwen who died years ago. Layla feels sorry, but Emma consoles her. Peter is visibly suffering, and Logan volunteers to go talk to him. He wishes it was a trick from Mysterio, his memories on top of evidently false memories. He can't think of anything but MJ. Peter has a son now. What of that? He thinks an existential crisis wasn't in the brochure when he signed up to become a superhero. Logan listened, but reminded him that they had things to do while telling him his side of things. It looks like Logan wanted to be Nick Fury, which makes Peter lighten up a little, but Peter swears he'll kill the perpetrators of this crime. After all, nobody deserves this done to them. The heroes, with Layla and Emma's power in hand, head to Cincinnati for Kitty Pryde, Greenwich Village, New York for Doctor Strange, Washington, D.C. for Ms. Marvel, Chicago for Tony Stark, Hell's Kitchen, New York for She-Hulk and Daredevil, and finally the Bronx, where they spot an aged and peaceful Steve Rogers. This version of him didn't get frozen alive in ice during World War II. With the heroes assembled, they brief them all, and Emma talks to them about how it all unfolded. She lays out the truth about how Magneto used his daughter to turn the world to feed his ideas and wishes. They used Xavier, the most powerful mutant psychic's powers, to dig into everyone's mind, hoping to rationalize his actions by giving everyone what they presumably wished for. Emma senses Hawkeye's mind is still doubtful at the events, and she offers Clint to unlock his memories using Layla's powers. As he starts arguing, they're ambushed. It's the Red Guard. Rogue declares the heroes under arrest, to which they respond by breaking into a fight. Chaos ensues, and amid combat, Rogue gets a hold of Layla, and the fight stops. Layla reactively causes an impulse of her power, which flashes the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, and they sit there, confused for a while, trying to recover from the burden of truth, from the realization of their true reality. Logan reaches for Raven, who slaps him, sadly breaking her hand. Carol points out that Hawkeye slipped away in all of the commotion. Rogue tries to interrogate the kid with the strange powers as she absorbs only a little of her power, and she's never felt anything like it before. Emma and Scott point out that they can all have their breakdowns later. Peter calls for first dibs when they're allowed the time to have nervous breakdowns. They get right back to business as Logan and Carol discuss the plan. They must go right to Magneto and find Charles Xavier. Eric must know where he is. Lorna, aka Polaris, has been calling for her father Eric, who's lost in thought. He tells Lorna he's okay. Lorna leaves, not before telling him Victor Von Doom will arrive soon, and for him to cheer up before his appearance. Eric makes his way to Xavier's memorial stone and stares over the epitaph. It says, he died, so Genosha could live. Gate crashing a gala. The helicarrier sets course for Genosha, its command center, and its personnel under Emma Frost's control. She assures Spider-Man they can't hear or see anyone. She used her mutant powers to project 17 separate commands to cover them. Over in Genosha, Von Doom's shuttle lands, and he makes a grand entrance. As he greets Magneto, the tension between the two powers is palpable. They take pictures together as they wait for the other guests of honor who had begun to gather at Castle Magnus for a gala. Back at the helicarrier, the heroes are told to hold it together as they feed themselves. They all need their strength for the upcoming fight. Peter eavesdrops upon a worried Luke Cage as he calls for Jessica Jones. He hears the voicemail, but he hears a man's voice and abandons the idea before he can leave a message. The two share a moment as Peter tells him he didn't call Mary Jane either. Scott gathers the heroes and makes a speech. He'd been the leader of the X-Men ever since he was a teenager. The entire time, he always prided himself on his non-violent approach and his tactical restraint, his moral high ground. But today, they can't afford to lose, no matter the cost. They have to win. To win, they all must fight without restraint. Whatever boundaries they've maintained in the name of good or fitting must be shed before the fight. It might just be their saving grace. Logan asks for the plan. The plan is 3 teams. Peter asks if they'll try and put the world back together, if that's even a possibility. Nobody knows. Carol talks about the possibility of having to live in an unchanged world, knowing the truth but not having the power to change anything. Emma replies to both in the same way, telling them they'll know once they get there. Cloak compares the event to a bomb going off, except the bomb has already exploded and doing nothing now could worsen things. Agent Drew adds to his thoughts by questioning who amongst them feels hurt. Magneto got what he wanted, but so did everyone. She admits she was happier here. Isn't there an argument that they deserved this? They deserve to be happy for once. She wonders if it was meant to happen sooner or later. Logan calls her thoughts on the topic embarrassing as she goes on. When something of this magnitude happens, they must step back and think maybe it was intended to happen. Who are they to decide how the world was supposed to be? Maybe this was natural selection, like when the meteors wiped out the dinosaurs. This could be a way for mutantkind to become the dominant species on the planet. On hearing all this, Spider-Man leaves the room and Logan mocks her for saying all of this aloud. Scott breaks the silence by continuing to explain his plan. As the helicarrier reaches Genosha airspace, Scott explains what the teams will do. Even with the help of Emma and Doctor Strange hiding them from view, Magneto will sense they're coming. They might know something's wrong even if they don't know the intruders. On the ground, the procession welcomes King T'Challa of the African Commonwealth of Wakanda. Fantasia senses something but isn't sure. Next, the King of Latveria, Victor Von Doom. Janice Vale is a visiting delegate from the Kree Empire. Princess Aurora of Kenya. King Namor of the Kingdom of Atlantis. The House of M is now brimming with various personalities. As the heroes land, Scott explains their primary goal is to find Charles. Cloak must take Emma wherever she needs to be. Stephen Strange will use the astral plane to get through to Wanda and try to find out what happened. He hopes to cut through to the heart of the problem. The rest of them stay behind to keep the House of M occupied. Finally, the royals and honored guests welcome the House of M, Pietro, Wanda, her twins, Lorna, and sitting on the throne, Eric. Fantasia spots a rogue sentinel heading their way, only for it to reach Magneto and Lorna, who float up to meet it and, with their powers, shred it to pieces. What followed was a full assault on the House of M by the rest of the heroes. Scott spots Magneto amidst the chaos and unleashes his beam, destroying everything around him in the process. Rogue, using her absorb powers, goes for Namor and Aurora. On the other side of the castle, Cloak, Emma and Layla make their way and find Xavier's memorial. She's heartbroken to find out about Xavier's death and breaks down, sobbing. Layla wonders if it's all over, just when Cloak disappears into the ground and comes back to tell them he found nothing underneath. Xavier could still be somewhere alive. In the name of the Father, She-Hulk orders the heroes to keep fighting as they're surrounded by countless enemies and fight through the madness. Rogue pulls enough power from the enemies to blast through the battlefield and leave a mark in its wake. Polaris tries to protect her brother, but something has weakened her severely. She orders Pietro to leave and find where the father landed. Wanda seems to have simply fallen apart in the commotion. Quicksilver rushes towards Rogue, only to be deflected away in a loud explosion and have his question go unanswered. Doctor Strange creates an astral projection and makes his way into Wanda's chambers. She welcomes him while she's playing with a child. They greet each other, and Strange expresses concern over her body fading away. She tells him it was just something for her father to show off on occasion. The real one is the one he's talking to. Stephen gets closer as he asks the child if he can play. Wanda had missed her talks with Stephen. She saw him as someone important to her. She asks how he found himself in Genosha. Doctor Strange realizes she remembers him. He then tells her she brought them all here through her actions, indirectly. He thinks Wanda's subconscious mind created Layla Miller to unite and bring them all here. She doesn't remember it, but then again, she's created so much lately by saying, "That's what mummies do." He gets straight to the point and asks her whether she created her father too. There were rumors of his death and a puzzling rebirth. He asks her how long she's been toying with the world. Strange expresses concern for their friend's safety and shows Wanda the fight happening outside. The heroes fighting over Eric. Wanda speaks on how no one should be fighting. The purpose of her actions was that there'd be no more fighting. She goes on to add that no matter what she does, there's always fighting. Strange asks her if her father caused this. He asked her where Xavier was, but she kept going on about how he wanted her to be happy, for them all to be happy. Wanda shows him a projection of the conversation Pietro had with Eric, their father. Strange then witnesses Pietro break down and be consoled by his sister. Her brother worries about their friends. They're coming for his sister, and this time he can't do anything about it. He tells her that he'd take her away, that he'd fight back, but Wanda makes him realize the futility of his emotions. She asks her brother if she's a coward for not wanting to kill herself. They talk about their father, who abandoned them over his war. They were supposed to be family. They were supposed to be heroes. Pietro liked being an Avenger more than he ever expressed. He'd do anything to take it all back. He grew more convinced by the moment that Wanda could change things for their sake. She could make everyone happy. Xavier's mind was inside her mind at the moment, attempting to keep her calm. She could combine her and Xavier's power, Pietro thinks. In an instant, they both could have everything they deserved. Their father could be given everything he dreamt of. They'd finally be a family and be happy. The reason they became Avengers was to try and change things for the better. Wanda could make things better permanently without fighting. Pietro finally convinced her by telling her that if she died, they could never be together again. After seeing all of this, Strange realizes they're making a mistake. He communicates with Emma telepathically, but before he can ask Wanda about Charles, she gets shot by an arrow. On the other side, Emma and Layla are confronted by an angry Magneto, and Layla uses her powers to neutralize him. Back in Wanda's chambers, Hawkeye steps out of the shade and reveals himself. He cries, asking Wanda why she killed him. Strange tries his best to calm him down, but Clint, too emotional now, knocks another arrow to finish the job. As he draws the arrow, he fades into nothing. Wanda's powers, the cause for it. She meant to protect her children, who are now scared and close to her. Strange feels terrified and asks her to listen to him as she sobs in horror at her realization that she wiped Clint away and can't control her powers. Pietro makes his way back through the chaos, only to be confronted by his father. Having seen the truth, Magneto is enraged over his son's actions. Pietro had used his sister and his father after all. Unknowingly, he'd destroyed everything and everyone, and used his father's name to do it. Wanda rushes to the scene of the fight, but she's too late and fails to protect her brother. Pietro dies in her arms. The heroes are stunned and can't decide what to do. Wanda's mind is too unstable to be understood. In the blink of an eye, she could erase everything from existence and not even realize it. Wanda starts speaking to her father as she sobs and mourns the loss of her brother. He only wanted his father to be happy. Eric had everything in this reality, but he still chose wrong and ruined his children. Why did he kill his child? You think we're better than humans because we're mutants, that we deserve to rule over them. I gave you what you wanted, but even then you failed us. We're not the next step in evolution. We're not gods. We're freaks. Mutants, Wanda says, pouring her heart out as she cries. Just as when Emma reads Wanda's mind and figures out what's about to happen, Wanda utters 3 words: no more mutants. What follows is a bright flash of light which envelops the entirety of the world. A changed world once again. The heroes made it back to their world. They're all back in their lives as they left it. One moment they're fighting, the next they wake up in their beds. Peter has a splitting headache in the Avengers Tower and makes his way to the meeting room. It's clear to them they all had the same experience. They don't understand why only some of them remember the events that transpired on Genosha, while the rest seem oblivious to it ever happening. Ms. Marvel asks if everything's normal, but she's interrupted by a wary Dr. Strange, who says everything is not quite right. At the Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters, Emma wakes up in horror as if from a nightmare. She immediately rushed in and witnessed crying and panicking students. The rest of the X-Men are trying to help the students. The X-Men still have their powers, Emma wonders, but Wanda said no more mutants. What could that mean? Kurt, worried about Logan, finds him in a field nearby and wakes him up. Logan remembers his whole life, all of it, every single moment. Emma runs to Cerebro, ignoring everyone calling to her. She wants to find out what happened. She tears up as she comes to the grim realization that mutant numbers have dropped off the face of the planet. The Earth projection above her confirms it. Hank and Scott make it to the room as Emma explains to them that the mutants are simply not mutants anymore. They're still alive, now without their abilities. Next, she tries to find Xavier and Wanda, but fails to find either. As Emma walks out of the Cerebro chamber, she wants to be distanced from the commotion as she tries to figure out what exactly happened. Did Wanda delete the X gene from everyone she could reach, or did she just repress the mutation? The only thing Emma was sure of was what Xavier would know. Various news channels covered the incident across the world. Nothing has been ruled out, but the general public is told that this was not an anti-mutant conspiracy of any sort, or if it could be a virus affecting the mutant populace. Back in the meeting room at the Avengers Tower, the heroes watch the news, and Stephen Strange concludes that the only people who remember the event at the House of M must be those protected by Emma's psychic defense and his spellcasting. Strange feels guilty. He can't find any trace of Wanda. He, as the master of the mystic arts, had one task: to protect the world from an attack like the one that took place, and he failed to stop it. Soon, Stark finds out there's someone at the mansion, and the heroes head out to investigate. Amongst the ruins, they come across Hawkeye's suit propped up on a wall by his arrows. Next to the outfit is a torn-up piece of paper with the news of Hawkeye's death. They don't know what to make of it all. In the ruins of Genosha, a powerless mutant roams about aimlessly. He feels terrible anguish when he's unable to lift a metallic fork with his powers. He falls to his knees as he cries over his loss. The loss of his war, the loss of his nation, the loss of his powers, and the loss of his children. After a few moments pass, he's confronted by the X-Men, and Logan pounces upon him immediately. He draws his claws and grabs hold of Eric's neck, asking him the questions that have plagued his mind for a while now, especially the whereabouts of Xavier, Pietro, and Wanda. Eric doesn't know, and Emma confirms he's not lying. Kitty comes forth and makes the heroes understand that Magneto didn't cause any of this. He's as much a victim as anyone else. Wolverine leaves him be, wishing him a terrible sapien's life. Somewhere, Wanda lives a peaceful life. The world starts to pan out, first revealing her whereabouts, an unknown region in Central Europe. Simultaneously, the radio show's guest, Dr. Pym, talks about the consequences of what happened to the mutants. The planet must surely react to the sudden loss of such energy. Newton's third law, he says, as he explains the energy must go somewhere. He asks, what will be the reaction as the world continues to pan out to space and a crimson burst of energy manifests at the horizon? Marvelous review. The House of M is a pivotal event in recent Marvel history, with ramifications affecting things even today. The tie-ins to the Avengers Disassembled issue and E for Extinction arc of New X-Men are lovely. It was a novel idea to bring back Wanda's trauma regarding her children in such a big way. The setting and tone deliver the gravity of the situation effectively, and the fact that so many heroes have changed their lives makes the event feel cataclysmic. The plot twist near the end was quite interesting, and it speaks for Magneto's character, as referenced in a previous tie-in, Excalibur number 14. Perhaps the most significant thing is this comic's effect on comic culture. The phrase, "no more mutants," is one of the most iconic lines ever written in a comic book, and it caused huge shifts in the continuity of the universe. The comic successfully managed to create a large number of spin-off series and affected many other pre-existing comic series. As for the comic itself, the art style is very captivating, and it feels good to see our favorite characters with an emotionally charged face. I loved the few panels where the artist had full artistic freedom, and the scene was described vividly. For example, the page where Eric's reading Xavier's epitaph. The dialogue is mostly serious but delivers the narrative well. Each situation is gripping and makes the reader feel like everything's important. The presence of many characters ensures fans from a wide range of Marvel comics would appreciate the story. Maybe the best thing about this comic is that there's no villain per se. It's a story of heroes suffering tragedy and recovering from it together.